Hello, hello in UK Health Radio land. I'm Liz Larson and I'm here with my friend,
Bill McKenna.
Hey, Bill McKenna. Today we have a really fun guest. This is going to be a great conversation. And I was just saying off camera that Bill and I would normally have talked this over before the show, but we have not. So this is going to be really fun. Our guest today is Dr. Todd Frisch. And he specializes in restorative medicine, nutrition, homeopathy, kinesiology, acupuncture, iridology, traditional Chinese medicine, and facial diagnosis. And he lives in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, we're going to talk about facial diagnosis, but that is a massive CV and a massive amount of education. So this should be really fun. So Dr. Todd Frisch, he retired from private practice, but since then he's on what he calls a mission to change the medical narrative from what's wrong to what's not right. And so that'll be an interesting thing to explore. But he's dedicated in what he calls his twilight years to sharing his time-tested clinical pearls with all of those who are passionate about restoring health in our nation's crumbling health as a group, but as a system as well. So welcome, Dr. Todd Frisch.
Thank you. You didn't say I once scored 54 points in a basketball game, but we'll let that, we don't have to include that if you don't want.
I mean, that's a lot of points in a basketball game. I have to say, officially, I have never scored even 1 point in a basketball game. How about you, Bill?
You know what? It's been so long. I was an absolute horrible basketball player.
Well,
awesome. Yeah, it's funny because I always say I don't math and I don't sport, but I do help Olympic athletes. So go figure, right?
How cool.
So, Dr. Frisch, would you tell us why in the world did you study all of these modalities?
Well, I want to enhance this paradigm shift from, we're trained as physicians to ask what's wrong. And I get that, and it's very valuable. The problem is, if you're intellectually honest, we'll have patients come in, we know something's wrong, they know something's wrong, yet every medical test we run, x-rays, blood work, CTs, whatever it might be, comes back textbook midline normal. And, here's where females get abused in medicine. It's, oh, honey, you're stressed. Let's take 20 milligrams of Prozac. So now you don't care about the fact you feel like crap, which, I never felt was a real great way to start things. So it really, I realized you got to kind of be 2/3 sick before medicine sees anything wrong. And that's not a slam against medicine. It's just more observational. Now, once you cross that line, you have a named diagnosis. You want a what's wrong doctor in your camp. That's where medicine shines. But 2/3 sick can be a little too far in a lot of cases. We talked about restorative medicine. I'm trying to change that mantra also. In the beginning, I was labeled a quack, and nobody likes to be labeled that, but I was kind of helping people, and I kind of just went with it, even though it kind of hurt my feelings. But then there was this shift when they realized, well, we're not quacks, but we're alternative, and so you could choose this or this, and that was equally as offensive to me as quack, to be quite honest with you. And then we transitioned from there into what they call complementary medicine. Now we're complementing medicine. And that then shifted. We all took courses in CAM, complementary and alternative medicine. And that went along for a little bit. And then they decided, well, we're not going away. We're going to call this integrative medicine. So Western medicine integrated what we did. And that lasted a very short time because medicine really bought into it, at least the forward thinkers, and they now call it functional medicine, which I, like you, Liz, it sounds like math to me. I'm like, math has its place, but not in medicine. You have to think a little differently. So I'm trying to smash that term functional and change it to restorative medicine. Let's restore people back to a place they should have never left in the first place. What a great idea.
That is so much more intelligent than chasing it after the fact. It has become so dense in the body, and good luck. Yeah. So we're both so very, very curious about one aspect of the things that you do, which is your face reading. Now, this is the first time I heard about this years ago. I was like, what? They're saying that you can actually tell about not only a person's personality, but also about any impending issues with their health through their face. Now, certainly, I kind of knew this intuitively because, alcoholics, you look at their nose and you're like, hey, they got a bunch of veins sticking out. I think that one's been drinking there. He's been hitting the sauce real hard, So, clearly you started noticing some things, or, people had a massive amount of acne or something, and you're like, there's probably something going on there. But this has been taken to an actually extraordinary level. And it's ancient too. It has ancient roots.
Yeah, it is.
But,
it very much is.
And we're so lucky. Everybody listening here, world's most leading authority here. This is written the book on it. So tell us about it. Tell us about face reading and what is this? Where did it come from? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's not new. And first of all, we all do facial diagnosis. When you meet someone or your child comes down in the morning and you look at them and you go, you okay? Something bothering you? You feel okay? What did you see you didn't see the day before? So again, we have to realize we all do facial diagnosis on some level. We just put some legs. My daughter and I wrote this book. She kind of took my life experience, and if I'd have written the book, it'd have been 9,000 pages, nobody'd read it because I could never stop. But we kind of squeezed it in. It's ancient. In China, it's called Mian Sheng. In Japan, it's called the art of Bo Shin. Both mean facial diagnosis. And every lump and bump and line on our face has a message to tell us. Now, I did the facial diagnosis on both of you, which was lots of fun because in a clinical setting, I've got history in front of me. I've probably done blood work. I've asked a bunch of questions, and then I would do my evaluation and then come back and give my report. The way I do it today is I don't know a thing about either one of you, and I simply read the tea leaves and the results. I think, Bill, you said I was in the 90 percentile, or 90% plus accurate, and that's pretty normal for what's going on. So my motivation was really, I was motivated. Matter of fact, I'll just read it from the dedication of the book. So dedication: to my medical failures. When I failed, I dove deeper, studied harder, and continued to search for that missing puzzle piece. To all of you, I'm eternally grateful. It was my failures that motivated me. It annoyed me that they didn't get well because I wanted everyone to get well. And, it's illogical to think that, but why not have that as a starting goal? You want a starting goal that I want to help 50% of the people. Well, that's a stupid starting goal. I wanted to help 100%. And the ones that didn't respond, I would kind of, well, what did I not see? Is there anything? Kind of a sad story, and I'll just jump into it and do it quickly. I had a gentleman, he was just a spiritual giant. His name was Jack, and I went to church with him. And when Jack came in the room, there was just a difference in the room. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't self-assured. He just was a gentle man with great spiritual strength. And he would always bring his medical blood test to my office and have me look at it because there's normal range, and I'd squeeze him into an alpha range. And he came in on a Tuesday around 11 o'clock, and he said, hey, I got my blood work, Dr. Todd. I'll set up an appointment. I said, Jack, I got a couple more patients. Give me just hang a little bit. We'll look it over, and then we'll go to lunch. He said, that'd be great. So I looked at his blood test, and I said, I knew his medical doctor ran the test. I said, what did Dr. Mike have to say? And Jack said, Dr. Mike said, I wish my blood test was as good. And I said, Jack, not only is it good medically, this is the best it's ever been. You are textbook midline normal. You've never had a healthier blood work. That was a Tuesday. On Thursday, he was jogging in a place called Queenie Park in St. Louis, and he was dead before he hit the ground. And I just, I can't tell the story without feeling this grip in my chest. Like, I just told him his blood test was the best it's ever been, and he's clinically dead. And I thought, I got to make a change. This isn't working. And I just dug deeper. I studied Ayurvedic medicine. I studied astrology. Get a lot out of astrology. I'm sure there's benefit in it, but it didn't work for me from a clinical standpoint. studied deep into Chinese medicine. And I just looked for those ways. I studied iridology. I went out to California and studied with Dr. Bernard Jensen. I spent a week at his ranch. I studied macrobiotics. I was macrobiotic for about a 2-year period of time. I studied with Michio Kushi. I had this thirst for knowledge. I'm a bucket face, so I love knowledge. I love to put things into my bucket and learn. So I just had this thirst, unquenchable thirst, to understand how the human body works, and it just evolved into where it is today, and it ended up with a book that again my daughter wrote called WTF. Doesn't sell well in church bookstores, but Why the Face, a practical guide to understanding health and personality through facial diagnosis. I've got over 80 books on facial assessing. The majority talk about personality. I wanted something that had a physiological component, and that's where I spent most of my energy on this book, trying to get into the, psychologically is great and very important, but physiologically, I needed to, is there a liver weakness? Is there some gallbladder issues? Is there some blood sugar issues? Is there some subclinical thyroid? And it just made me much more understanding of my patients and made me a much better doctor.
I love this, that your motivation came out of your failure. A lot of times in medicine, what we see is something that is not working, especially in diagnosis, and they just dig in deeper and keep doing it because it's the standard.
Right.
I heard a statistic, and I don't know if it's true, so I'll ask you about it. I heard a statistic that medical diagnosis is often no more than 5% truly accurate. And it almost sounds like what you're saying about your friend with a fabulous report.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, the stats are, you have to look at the unbelievably good diagnostic areas. You got to think of Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, that type of thing. Mayo Clinic upon autopsy is right 43% of the time on autopsy. The patient's clinically dead, and 43% of the time they were correct, which meant, do the math, 57% of the time the patient was being treated for something that they did not have. Does that scare you? Scares me. And again, this is top-notch clinics in the world. What happens when you go to some town like I live in? I now live in northern Wisconsin, and healthcare isn't on the standard of Mayo Clinic. And so, I have this belief it's much easier to stay healthy than get healthy. So I don't think enough emphasis is put on staying healthy. We're looking for these magic bullets and all these different ways to help. But we're not emphasizing self-responsibility. We're not emphasizing what can you do to help yourself. And I think that is a huge mistake. And that needs to change. We will not save this country's healthcare system because it's not worth saving. It is not an adequate system. There has to be a change, and it has to start with self-responsibility.
Well, I think it has to do with exactly what you're talking about, that so often it's by the numbers, it's by these numbers on a report, and the physician isn't really actively looking at the whole human. If it's oncology, they're looking at numbers for cancer, markers for cancer. I have a client actually who came to see me because she was having a bone marrow transplant. They said she has leukemia, and very, very aggressive leukemia. And the issue was that the process they have to do the bone marrow transplant itself could kill you. And some of the post-operative infections, in fact, preoperative infections, become an issue. So she wanted to clear the fear out of her body in deciding, do I go forward with this or not? So she did, and she had really good outcomes. And she's about 1.5 years in. She said she is feeling better than she ever has in her whole life. She is living life to the fullest. She's happier than she's ever been. She looks better than she's ever looked. And she goes back and has testing every 3 months. They're looking for cancer. And on the last one, they said, well, you probably have 2 months to live. She's like, what are you talking about? I feel amazing. 2 months before you said I look great. So I think they're looking at numbers, and I wonder if someone like you had looked at her and said, you know, you're looking great. Like your face looks great. You're feeling healthy. Maybe leave out whatever the numbers have to say, you know, on the reports possibly. But I think what you're talking about is brilliant, and it goes along with what Bill and I do. It's a whole person. It is your psychology. It is those numbers. It is your physiology. It is your past. It is your opinions on things. And so it all has to be looked at together to really create a full picture of what is a human. A human is not just these numbers. So we're already up against our first break. We'll hear from the good folks at the UK Health Radio Network. And then we come back, maybe let's talk about what you actually found in our readings. That might be fun for everybody to hear what this really is all about. So interesting. All right, UK Health Radio, take it away. And we're back. We're talking with Dr. Todd Frisch about the medical healthcare system, but also about a tool that he uses called a facial diagnosis. So Bill, you got to talk to Dr. Frisch this morning, and I talked to him yesterday.
Okay.
What was that about for you?
Oh my gosh, it was so fun. I gotta share with everybody. He starts going down the list of, each individual part of my face, my ears and everything. And, to cut right to the chase on this, when he got done, he got through at my chin. It was like, he knew me all my life. He knew me and my character, it's like, I am who I am, I am who I am, and my, the fact that, we make no bones about it, right? Both you and me, Liz, we're on purpose. We know we're doing the work that we're supposed to do. This is where we're supposed to be, and we're supposed to be helping humanity, and we're doing this type of work for that. We're very, very, very clear. And without saying anything, he was like, oh, okay, well, this line over towards your nose, that specific areas, that's when we see people that are on purpose. And so I was, it was kind of interesting. And I am also just generally very kind of headstrong, determined. I have really good perseverance. That's just, I called it my endurance is I've always said I'm not sure if it's a blessing or a curse, because it just means you can beat things harder than the next guy and you won't quit. But there was one other really interesting aspect. Well, there's many aspects, but he's looking at my ears, in a picture, and he goes, "Oh, you had some sort of family issue, looks like it was your dad, and and it happened between the ages of 10 and 12. I mean, how freaking specific is that?" And he said a trauma. He said a trauma. And I was like, oh my God. I went back and did the math, and that puts me right about the third grade. So it was probably the very first, which kicked off a series of traumas. But I got moved when I was in the second grade to the third grade. I went from a public school to a private Catholic. And, I went from, things were great to I was in a place I didn't know anybody. Nobody knew me. I didn't have any friends. And for whatever reason, I didn't do the work, and I came home the first semester. I remember it was like 3 F's and a D, something like that. Something on that order. Is 2 F's and a D or 3 F's and a D? I'm not sure. But oh my God, I took my very first real life beating, a good old fashioned Irish beating, where we're not kidding. So anyway,
you realize that's really not funny anymore, but back in the day, that was an acceptable thing that parents could do.
How things were done, the bruise, the big thick strap and the actual bruises, kind of looking like, how the strap will, anyway, a lot of bruising and what have you. And anyway, over that series of time from about, 10 to 12, that was, those were some, difficult years of terror, I would say, beatings and terror, kind of in between the two, and some real significant kind of unpleasantries. And anyway, so I was like, oh my God, well, I had forgiven all of this. That was part of all of my, my serious things I went through. But he said something that was really important. And he said that you have a trauma. You have a trauma. And, although I had forgiven, actually my body really felt those things, and it felt the adrenaline rush of, all of these things, and, being constantly on alert. You can imagine you're just on alert. What's next, because you don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
And hyper vigilance. Anyway, so today I was like, well, after our meeting this morning, and I was like, oh, okay, well, great. I'm going to process that. And so I made sure to do the work that myself and Liz do, because, I know that all of these traumas, they hold back a good life. Even though I have forgiven and stuff, it's like, oh, you need to process the trauma of it. So I did it. I'm not sure if it reflects in my ear, or I'll be happy to show you my ears. But
not yet.
but the interesting thing is that, is it true that when we change our personality, meaning process a trauma or forgive or whatever, that particular face aspect changes, or are we just left with it indelibly?
No, not only does the face change, it should change. And this is why doing an initial evaluation and then several years later doing it again, we'll see dramatic changes in a person when they step towards a healthy place. I always taught my patients there's 3 levels of health. There's a physical level of health. I was very adept and good at that. There's a mental, emotional level of health. The debate is anybody good at that? And then there's a spiritual level of health. And all those have to be factored into the healing equation. To ignore any of them is medical malpractice, as far as I'm concerned. Now, the problem is medicine is handicapped in excess of knowledge. We're so into detail and data. It's such strong in that area, we quit being intuitive. And the really good doctors will balance that logic and that science with an intuitive entity. And that combination is very, very important from a healing standpoint. And the body marks itself. Anytime there's a trauma, an event, an injury, it will mark itself. And there's these microsystems that we can use to manage it. We've all heard of foot reflexology. There's hand reflexology, and acupuncture is something called auricular therapy, where we treat just points on the ear. And facial diagnosis is just another microsystem. And there's a tendency to poo-poo it and put it in the woo-woo category. But really, we think of this. We start with one cell. Then we divide it to 2 and 4 and 8 and 16. And the 16-cell embryo is called a Marola. That's a buckethead comment, by the way. But why is it so illogical to think that information wouldn't be transmitted from the one cell we start with to the trillions of cells we end up with? It's illogical not to think there would be a system that we could use that could help that. So the changing in the face is very important. And it goes both ways. As things happen in a negative, it'll impact us and it'll show on our face. Conversely, if things go in the right direction, it can happen. Just a quick story. I invented a company or a system, and it turned into a national company. And I had no intention of having a national company. It's called Shape Reclaimed. And it's an anti-inflammatory, immunoenhancing. It's a mild detox, and the side effect is weight loss. But we've got 500-600 practitioners across the nation, and this one practitioner in Nebraska was struggling with a patient, and I personally knew this patient. She had come, heard me do a talk in Chicago, and she was well over 400 pounds, and she had done very, very well. She's lost 240 some pounds. I mean, she's really, really doing very well. But she was having some digestive issues, and this doctor couldn't figure it out. So I had a picture of this gal sent to me, and I went through it. And back to your ear thing, I was giving her the report, and I said, something happened at age 11. This was very specific, age 11, and the phone went dead. I mean, this gal had never married. She was morbidly obese. She ended up, she was a teacher and became a guidance counselor. Just a beautiful spirit. This woman was just a wonderful human being. But the phone goes dead at this common age 11. And I said, are you still there? And she said, I'm going to share something with you. I was sexually abused by my father starting at age 11. And I said, when did you start putting on weight? And now she's crying on the phone. She said age 11. She put on a coat of armor, literally a coat of armor, fat, to not let any man ever come near her. Again, she never married. And here's the interesting thing. She was having bowel problems and constant diarrhea, couldn't stop it, nothing worked. So in acupuncture, there are 5 elements. And the metal element is your lung and large intestine. And each one of these 5 elements has an emotion that goes with it in a deficiency or an excess. And the emotion of the metal element, lung and large intestine, is despair. She'd been treated many times for depression. None of the drugs worked. Actually, the drugs made her worse. But once I made her brain aware that it was despair, guess what went away? Her diarrhea. And it was just a remarkable thing. I didn't give her any probiotics. I didn't give her any bowel support. I didn't give her L-glutamine for leaky gut. I didn't do anything other than make her brain aware of what the causative factor was for her. Now, she stored a lot of toxins in these fat cells for decades. And now she loses these fat cells, they break out, and the emotions that were stored now go into the system. And that despair hit her bowel. She also had skin problems too, ironically. Lung and large intestine governs skin. And so we just made her body aware, and she had this magnificent healing. What an amazing body we have. I could talk from now till the cows come home about stories very similar to that. And it's just remarkable when a patient gets it, and you can see it in their eyes, and their eyes snap to attention, and their face changes almost immediately.
That is, so interesting, because that was me. Since the beginning of my life, as far as I can remember, sometime around that 8, 9 area, sometime around then. And I've had diarrhea pretty much ever since, until, I got, Liz had helped me with kefir, and that really squared things away.
Sure.
But, and I had a lot of antibiotics because I did a lot of things I shouldn't do. So, anyway.
But Bill, let me add, you've also cleared out a ton of the trauma from your physical body. And the work with Cognomovement that we do, we signal the nervous system, maybe a lot in the same way you're talking about, Dr. Frisch, about, once the brain is aware of the pattern that is harmful to the body, it deletes it. So we trigger the body to do that. And so that's another thing that, Bill has done is, become fully aware of some of those traumas. And there's, different ones become available as others clear. And so I think this one that Dr. Frisch found for you, Bill, is a one of the more final that need to be deleted around that specific pattern. Yeah. So we are up against our break again. This conversation is going way too fast. just fair warning for everybody. We know we're going to do an extended conversation with this. So hold on for that. We will be right back. Let's hear from the good folks at the UK Health Radio Network. And we're back. We are talking with Dr. Todd Frisch about WTF, why the face? And that Dr. Frisch did facial readings for both Bill and I that were super, super interesting. So Dr. Frisch, how did you do that? In both cases, for myself, I would say the reading was 99.9% accurate. And the only, fraction of percent that isn't, I think maybe something I haven't thought of yet. I don't understand yet. It was so fascinating that the reading, either you're a really, really good psychic, or this is a really good science, but it spoke to things that are part of my, inner self-talk, things that I don't say to other people, but I inherently do know about myself, right? So even just the 3 face shapes that you said apply to my face, there was a third one that I could hear you kind of being like, I don't know that this fits, but it's there. And I'm like, oh no, it's there. But it's one of those things that's an inner dialogue, something really only I know. So the question is, how did you do that?
Yeah, interesting. I've been asked by the military to assess 1,000 soldiers to determine PTSD and traumatic brain injury, mild, moderate, severe, or non-existent. And we thought it would be flooded with 1,000 pictures instantly. And I did this free of charge. The military wants to find a faster way to assess and diagnose PTSD. It costs the government, if the soldier doesn't kill himself, typically north of $600,000 to treat a PTSD soldier. And as a matter of fact, of the soldiers that said not one of them didn't have PTSD, 100%. And the majority of them had traumatic brain injuries. So I don't know anything about these people. I don't know their rank. I don't know what division of the military they're in. But I got feedback of what turns out to be a general who's part of the group that's behind trying to get these soldiers helped in a quicker way. Now, they're not going to treat them the way I think they should treat them. They're going to give them medications, and I think there are better ways. Not I'm against medication, but there are ways that you can support these people. But his comment was, I was too accurate. I must be psychic. I kind of was insulted by that. We all have gifts, and I certainly have a gift. You two have gifts, and those that are watching this, if you see these lines on all 3 of us right here as they come down, mine are as deep as you'll see on a human being. They're called Fa-Ling lines, Fa-Ling. Poly means purpose and spiritual strength. Now, these lines form in an effort to help mankind. If you're all about helping your own pocketbook, you will not develop Fa-Ling lines. Putin doesn't have Fa-Ling lines.
For the radio, tell everybody what you're talking about, which lines.
I'm sorry. This is going to be, so the lines run from the corner of the nose to the corner of the mouth. And mine are deep, and now if they go past the corner of the mouth, that's a sign they're under too much stress. There's lots of, if one's deeper than the other, they come together. There's meanings to all these things. But again, these nasal labial lines is what they're called, again, indicate purpose, that we found our purpose, we're living our purpose, we have great spiritual strength. And if I'm using spiritual strength to help me with my diagnosis, I'm way okay with that. The interesting thing is we have a course that you can actually take to learn to do facial diagnosis. And it is so rewarding to get calls from these practitioners. Some are doctors, some are health coaches, some are nurses and whatever. And they get it. And I'll help them with the first and the second. By the third, they're experts. And I tell everyone, you're going to learn 83% of what you need to know by taking the course. The other 17%, that's 40 years of experience. That's where the expertise truly comes. So, I've got the only difference between someone that's not taking my course and me is I got 45 years of experience in this world. So, you do hone those skills. And with you, one of your face shapes didn't go with what I see on your face, and it has to do with jade. Your cheekbones are wider than your face, so they come out a little bit. Jade is a very hard gem, and jade faces tend to be hard and just tough. They like everything to be their idea. But I really felt your face didn't show that jade quality, although I'm sure you have some jade tendencies. But I think there are events in life that have hardened you, and that has created a need for a jade face. Will you take on some of those things? Sure. People will say, you feel a little cold about this, you're not emotionally connected, and that kind of thing. But again, it's more what has happened in your life that helped your face form the shape that it is.
Well, actually, it's so fascinating because this is one of those, unless you know me really well, or unless you're inside my own head, you may not know this thing about me. So I actually think it's less of what happened, because there are things that have happened, but I'm not a person with massive trauma in my life that most people would classify that way. But I am a person who has different perspectives, like around things like death, things that might make someone else deeply sad. I have a different understanding about, which looks cold to other people. It is not. It's a universal understanding and a universal expansion, but I don't have that connected to the emotion that would create crying and that breakdown. And so it's a joke. You're so cold-hearted, right?
But you're not.
No, I'm not. But
There
is that aspect. And so there isn't a way you would have known that about me.
No.
But it's there. It's right on the facial reading. So that was very interesting. So if you want to, you can tell everybody the other parts of the face shape, because it's interesting. One of them, when you hear it, I was like, wait a minute, I don't like the sound of that. And the other one sounds very magnanimous. So you can go ahead and share it if you want to.
Yeah, so both of you are somewhat of a tree face. There's length to your face. Trying to think of a famous person as a tree face. Michael Phelps, classic example of a tree face. And he looks like a tree, very tall, powerful legs, this incredible swimmer, Olympic gold medalist. So the tree face that both of you have tells us both of you are deeply rooted. You can take the winds of life very, very well. But you also like to grow on your own. You want to see what that sky has to offer. As I said to both of you, the worst job in the world for you would be indoors with no windows. Send you straight to hell. It would just be very unhealthy.
Straight to hell.
Very unhealthy for you to have that. The thing that's the most wonderful thing about a tree face is your ability to spread your branches and protect. The problem I have with my female tree face is they were so into taking care of others, they kind of forgot to take care of themselves. So I'd speak into their lives in a way, and part of my reason for facial diagnosis was patient compliance. I knew how to speak into someone's life in a way that they were going to hear. I knew the music that was playing in the head. If they came in with the waltz, I didn't want to come in and do the cha-cha with them. I wanted to do the waltz with them so I could communicate in a way that they would understand. So for my tree face females, I would say, look, you love to help others. Oh, I do. And then I would say, well, what if you couldn't do that? And then the tears would kind of well in their eyes. And I said, look, we need to spend a little time on you. Just let's do some things to help you become very healthy so you can do the things that your creator wants you to do, which is helping others. The other face you have is bucket. So that's the
one that just doesn't sound nice.
Yeah, but I'm a buckethead. So as I said, I love this face. We like to put things in our bucket. We have a thirst for knowledge that's unquenchable. We are the thought leaders. We can sit in a chair all day and think. We need nothing. We don't need music. We don't need TV. We don't movies. We just need our brain. We love the process of thinking. There's no book on earth that shouldn't be personally owned by us and opened by us. So the problem with us bucket faces is we bucket faces is we tend to overthink. And I've had to learn to rein that in as a physician, because it would just, I was getting to the point I couldn't sleep. I was so involved in trying to help people and using my great bucket head in gathering data, that it was affecting me from a health standpoint. I had to learn to dance with it a little bit. So that's that bucket quality. Then the last was the jade, which is that little hard aspect that is there. So Bill is a tree face, and he's got some earth face. So he's very down to earth, a very earthy approach to life. And the thing about male earth faces, they'll tend to use humor as a crutch to get out of negative experiences. They'll kind of joke their way out of it. But again, it's just earth faces are very strong. Bill has a really strong constitution. He got that from a father who probably drank. My father gave me my strong constitution. He also died when I was 9 years old. So I'm not happy about that. But at the same time, I appreciate him giving me the strong constitution. If you have a weak constitution, what's your genetic makeup? You can't become an alcoholic because alcohol nails you right off the bat. People like Bill and I, we can do things to our body that aren't wise, but because of our strong constitution, we don't take the hit. Later on, we will, but currently, we can kind of handle that. So every face is knowing what they are is very helpful. There's something called a fire face. Fire face are like an upside down triangle. Very, very narrow chin, very wide forehead. They're very, very bright, but they're sensitive. Fire takes hold, it burns very, very quickly. So if a fire face comes into my office, in my report of findings, I will not say, look, you got 3 things going on. You're in big trouble. You got to jump on this right now. You got to fix this. And they'll not come back. What you say to a fire face is, look, you've got 3 things going on, but we need to respect your sensitivity. So we're going to start working in one area. And normally I'd support this with 3 different things, but we're going to start with one thing. Let's just do a half dose. So see how your very sensitive body accepts this. And that patient instantly changes. They think, oh my God, somebody finally understands me. And they become very compliant. It almost sounds sinister when I say it that way, but this was me trying to help them reach a level of restored health that they weren't capable of getting to, simply because I knew how to speak into their life based on the shape of their face. Does it sound woo-woo and hokey? Not for me, because I did it for 4.5 decades.
Actually, that's interesting because there is an NLP, neuro-linguistic programming principle about changing your tone, changing your countenance, changing your cadence to match a person you're talking to so that they feel heard. There's a term called very active listening. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that people complain about the most going into the doctor is they just didn't hear me. Even natural doctors, they just didn't listen to me. They had an idea of what was going on and they just wouldn't hear what I was talking about. So this ability of yours to just be able to see by their face shape, by what's going on in their face, how you might be able to reach them, I'm sure makes people feel deeply and incredibly heard. So everybody, we just have 2 minutes left of this interview, and we're going to continue on in an after conversation about this subject specifically. Why does it matter so much being heard in the doctor's office? And we're going to dig more into our readings, Bill's and mine. Would you please, Dr. Frisch, we've got 1.5 minutes left, tell everybody how they can actually work with you or reach with you or reach your products.
Yeah, we certainly have a website. It's whytheface.com. I also have, drtoddfrisch.com. My other company is Shape Reclaimed. It's shapereclaimed.com. So any of those will work. My email address is drtodd@shapereclaimed.com. If you go to the whytheface.com, you can sign up to do a facial diagnose. I can just give you a written, or I can do personally with you. That's significantly more expensive if I would spend an hour going through it. But the book's available on Amazon, or you can go to our website, and if you want a signed copy, I can mail it to you. All those things are certainly going to be available.
Well, that is wonderful. So, Bill, will you join us in the next conversation?
Absolutely looking forward to it.
Okay, for now, everybody, I highly encourage you to look into Dr. Frisch's website and the book, and it's fun to have the facial reading, so do that as well. But everybody out there in UK Health Radio land, until next week, be safe and be well. If you want to join us on the next conversation, that will be anywhere that you like to listen to your podcasts, or if you want to see our actual faces and know what Dr. Frisch is talking about, join us on YouTube at the Cognomovement channel. All right, you guys, we'll see everyone on the flip side. All right, everybody, we are back in our extended conversation with Dr. Todd Frisch, and we're talking about one of his many, many modalities of facial diagnosis. Bill and I both had a facial diagnosis with Dr. Frisch. It was fascinating. And we were talking about how that there is an ability, if you can read the face in the way that Dr. Frisch can, that you can feel very, very seen and heard by your physician. And my guess would be even psychotherapists could use this, even life coaches could use this. You know, there's a tool that Bill and I use. We call it being a neurological detective, where we see the neurology change on the face in real time. But I think what Dr. Frisch is saying is that every experience that you have shows up on your face. Your history genetically shows up on your face, but really who you are is represented there. And I think each of us going into a medical situation where we're reaching out for help, that we want to be seen in that way. We want you to know who we are and help us from that standpoint. But I think in medicine, most of the time, the doctor has no idea who their client is.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. It's been forced upon medicine in some ways. There was a day that the doctors kind of had all the power, and that sounds sinister, but it was a good thing because they managed their practices. That entity died when HMOs and PPOs came, and they were told how to do what they spent a lifetime trying to become very, very adept at. That got even more toxic when hospitals would buy the doctor's practice, and they had a 3-year deal with them. The first year they had to see X number of people, and they were paid X amount of money. The next year they had to see more people but paid the same. The third year they had to see more people, were paid less, and the fourth year they left their practices, and now the hospital owned the practices. So they literally lost all their power. And fortunately I never got into that world. I was in private practice, and it never bit me, and I would have fought against it violently. But they've lost their joy. Now the new doctors, that's the new norm, which is the toxic nature of what has happened here. And quality of care is not high on the list of priorities. I teach in a lot of venues at this point in my life. I'm 71 years old, and I love life. I live life in a Hallmark movie in northern Wisconsin. I live on a lake. My wife is my best friend, and she makes my life easy by allowing all these things to happen. And but in teaching, especially doctors, I will say, look, you're going to go through 3 phases in your life. The first phase is survival. You don't come out of the chute as a doctor successful. You have to hone your trade, practice your skills. And from that level, you go into the second phase, which is success. And everybody in the audience goes, you can look on their face like, what is better than success? Isn't that what we're all shooting for? There's something better than success, and that's significance. The kind of work you folks do, what you're doing is significant. And this is where we have to shift the medical model. We have to not pay attention to being successful. Money is a byproduct of services already. You want more money, render more services. It's that simple. This isn't world economics. This is basic knowledge. You want to sell more cans of peas to make more money, then sell more cans of peas. But in the same thing with you want to see more people, then you can make more money. But if your goal is to be significant, it will change your life. It will change transgenerationally, and it is a good thing to change. Significance is what we want to be. I've met many successful people that were miserable SOBs, just toxic human beings. I've never met anyone that's significant that I wouldn't want to spend a long meal with them, just picking their brains.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? Right?
Yeah.
Somebody who has something significant to benefit the planet with. I think that might be my favorite thing on the planet is those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
But I want to ask Bill, what do you think about that, Bill? About being seen in a medical psychological setting when you're going to get help and you've had a lot of doctor's visits because you fell out of an airplane. What do you think about that, in your own journey about really being seen as a human?
That would explain the TBI we saw, the traumatic brain injury.
Right?
Oh yeah, and by the way, this is for everybody listening. I many years ago, Liz asked me, "Hey, Bill, you ever had a concussion or brain injury?" And I was like, "No." "Are you sure, Bill?" I was like, "Well, wait a second. I guess I spent 35 years in martial arts. I literally my parachute collapsed skydiving, and I end up breaking my face and my spine and my leg and many other bones, and they found me. I have no idea how long I was unconscious for on the ground, but I was in and out of consciousness, who knows, it could have been hours or whatever, nearly died. But many other things, but very specifically, the quality of care that I had some very interesting experiences in the journey, and there were a lot of times where there was just the doctor was emphatic. No, you didn't break your neck. No, I never seen a break like that on an X-ray. So no. Wait, of course I broke my leg, my neck, and it happened multiple. It wasn't once, but it happened multiple times. And so I find it. I was like, because when we were growing up, my age, it was like, there's the priest, there was the doctor, they're both, right there. It's not quite as good as the priest, but pretty close, altruistic, yes, say it, it's law, but interestingly enough, I found myself in Mexico, and I had a kidney stone or something like that. Anyway, extraordinary pain, or gallstone, kidney stone, I don't know what, but ended up in a Mexican hospital, down in deep, dark Mexico. And I'll tell you what, I was never so cared for in the United States. I was loved and cared for. Like they were like taking consideration of the entire human. They were like, okay, wait, no, we're going to check this now. And now we're going to look at this. And they were the amount of time I was like, they're spending all this time with me, and every little detail was considered, and you genuinely felt so cared for. I found it very remarkable, very different than the United States, and where I was raised here in the United States, I thought, best, we're programmed best health care in the entire world. Nothing's better. And we've got these drugs and what have you, but I find that I just found it quite interesting that quality of care really comes down to, I think, that personal, literally what's inside that human, that doctor, and where they're coming from. Unfortunately, as you're saying, all their power's been pulled, and I felt so sorry for doctors. I remember recently, after this whole COVID thing, was talking to doctors, and my heart went out to them because they were emasculated. You know, I was like, you boys, you spent all your life to get the education and the training and going to the finest of schools, Harvard, Yale, Stanford. And you can see that there's some not so much truths, and you can't say it. And they would have their license pulled. And they're told exactly how to treat somebody when they know something different. They're doctors. You're highly trained, highly at the best institutions, and having a drug company really, utilizing the institutions. I was like shocked, and my heart still goes out to them. I'm like, myself and Liz, we have interviewed another doctor who said that in the next, I think it was 24 months, that there was over 50% are planning to retire. Just quit. Is that true? Is that your understanding as well?
The problem is those of us, I retired in my 60s. We just got fed up. We now have to use I used to have a chart that I wrote little notes in that they had a baby, what their baby's nickname was and how much it weighed, and I had all this information on the inside of that I could connect, and I'd say, hey, how's little Johnny doing, or whatever. And then I was forced to walk in with an iPad, and there's no future on an iPad. It's only what's right there. And it was, and it caused me to quit. And I did not want to quit, but I didn't want to practice the way I was told I had to practice. I refused to do it. And we're losing great minds, people that understand. But it happens so subtle. It's the old joke about if you throw a frog into boiling water, he'll jump right out. But if you throw him into water and heat it up slowly, he will die in the heated water. And if we just take medications, for one thing, who knows the most about medications? Well, it's the pharmacist, okay? Who tells the guy that knows the most about the drug what to do? It's the doctor. Now, who tells the doctor, who knows the second most, what drug to give? Some cute little girl, or not trying to be sexist, or some guy that works for Merck or Pfizer comes in and says, you should use this drug. Give you an example of this. There was a drug called Neurontin. It's gabapentin. It's a painkiller. And the drug manufacturer can only tell the doctor what the drug can be used for. You can't off-label it. Now, the doctor can off-label it. He can say, I can use this drug for migraine headaches. That's an antidepressant. But the drug rep cannot tell him that. So what they did with Neurontin is they broke the cardinal rule. They said, you could use this for this, this, and this, off-labeled it. They knew full well what they were doing, and the FDA fined them $51 million. That's a lot of dinero, if you think about it. They sold $2.7 billion worth of that drug. They traded $51 million for $2.7 billion. And that drug now is used throughout, and it's addictive, it's toxic, and it creates all kinds of problems. It's now no longer Neurontin, it's gabapentin. But that system was set up, and it is so wrong because the most educated has the least amount of say. The least educated is the guy that's being told what to tell the doctor to tell the pharmacist. It's a ass-backward system, and I don't know how to fix that.
You know what? For everybody listening, that is dead on. And it was shocking to me back in the day where you had literally no education whatsoever in medical things, being told, the FBI telling Twitter or Facebook, hey, that. And these doctors, the most educated in the world with studies. No, there's just some guy, some guy who probably maybe didn't even go to college.
Scary stuff.
So
unbelievable.
So let's get back to some of the things that are really resourceful about what Dr. Frisch can do. Because all of that is like, what is wrong with the system? And I think most of us are pretty aware.
Yeah,
But
good point.
if
Good,
you're
good.
really seeking to be well, and I think that's an interesting concept. What does it mean to be well? Most of us don't even really know. Does it mean that our bodies feel good? Does it mean that our mind is good as well? Does it mean that we're happy in our relationships? Like, what does being well really mean? And what does who you are, which I think is what Dr. Frisch really reads on a human, what does that have to do with becoming well?
When I started in practice, people just didn't want to have symptoms. This is 1980. And I saw a shift, and Nike helped that, and we're all running with Nike shoes, and so there's this movement towards better health, and people wanted to be healthy, and that lasted for a while, and then people wanted to be vibrantly healthy. They wanted to just be incredible. When I left practice, patients wanted to feel at 68 like they felt at 38. It was complete. Now I brought in the anti-aging, which is just toxic energy. To me, it's saying I'm afraid of dying. I thirst and I love living, and it's like there's a Bible study I go to, and there was going to be a conference called No Regrets, and it's a I think it was their 33rd year at this No Regrets conference, and one of the guys in Bible study are going to go to this conference. I said, no, I don't think so. And they said, well, why? Can I ask why? And I said, look, I don't mean to sound arrogant or ignorant, but I don't do regrets. I've done regrettable things in my life, but I'm not a woulda, shoulda, coulda kind of guy. I just don't do regrets. Again, I've done regrettable things. So it's a mindset that takes you. And as a practitioner, one of the things that I always wanted to see happen was something I call the faith circuit. And how this works is you as a practitioner or a doctor have to have faith in what you do. And the only way you get and maintain that faith is you continue to learn. You are not born full grown when you get your diploma. You have to continue that process and never stop seeking knowledge. So once you are in that search for understanding, when a patient walks in, energetically, they're going to pick that up, and they're going to have faith in you as a doctor. And that completing of that faith circuit, you got to be a total schmuck to screw up with that patient, because there's that connection that's so important. One of the problems in the learning process, I once had a dream. It talked about information versus affirmation. Most of us professionally seek affirmation. We continue to learn more and more what we know a lot about. But if you truly want information, you got to step outside your comfort zone and go study something that you don't believe in. It's kind of like if you're a liberal, you're not going to watch Fox News, and if you are a conservative, you're going to watch Fox News, and you're going to continue to watch Fox News over and over again, because it affirms what you believe. But if you really wanted information instead of affirmation, you need to go watch CNBC or MSNBC or whatever. I don't watch any of it because I think it all sucks. But the only way you can obtain information is to challenge your belief system. And I've always challenged my belief system with no regrets. And have I taken stuff that was a total waste of time? Absolutely. That I spend countless dollars on stuff that was absolutely useless? For sure. But I needed to know it was useless. And when I would go learn something, I would just buy in everything they're selling, and then I'd come back and I would challenge my belief system. If this changes my belief system, what would happen? And I grew as a practitioner and as a doctor simply because I just was open to anything and everything. And I don't think that's nurtured anymore. And the scariest part of this thing is we are destroying curiosity in this world, because we can go, Siri, how fast does a bumblebee fly? The answers are there, but here's what Siri can't do. It can't answer a question that's never been asked, and it can't come up with a new idea. And that's being sucked out of the brains of the children of this day and age, because we're not taught to be curious anymore. my conversations, my buckethead conversation with my mother always ended with, because I said so. that was the energy. Because, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? Because I said so. That thirst, that curiosity, it scares me what's happening. And if we lose that, mankind is doomed. We have to make curiosity a key mechanism in the healing arts.
Well, that is an incredible place to stop. It's 100% true.
No, we don't want to stop. Come on.
The more questions that we have, the more that we're reaching for a better state of health for ourselves and for humanity. That's the most important part. And I think that was one of the things that we started out this conversation with, that all three of us have the lines on our face that show that we have a purpose to change humanity. And that is what true health does for us. It changes humanity. All right, you guys, we will have Dr. Frisch back because there's so much more to talk about.
Oh, we gotta do that. We gotta get him. We're gonna get you on the schedule here.
I'm in.
We'll do it. All right. For now, everybody reach out to Dr. Todd Frisch. It's Dr. Say where we can reach you again.
Well, if you go to WTFWhytheface.com, there's all kinds of places you can get to me from there, and that'll get you into the book. And if you want a book, we can get it to you. If you want to take a class, we can get you signed up for that. All kinds of different things we can do. Happy to help.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much for being here with us, Dr. Frisch. It was amazing.
Total joy. Total joy.
Thanks for being here with us, Bill McKenna. And everybody out there in UK Health Land and beyond, be safe and be well, and we will see you again next time.
Thanks for being here with us on the New Life Perspective radio show. For more information or to find out more about the work that Bill and I do, please visit us at Cognomovement.com or email us at info@Cognomovement.com. See you again soon.